Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to call the City Council Special Meeting Budget Workshop to order. Cheryl, would you do the roll call, please?
Council members Hannah, Grunmeyer, Bash, Mayor Pro Tem Hoffman, Mayor Newton.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Berwin, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, sir.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll now start with discussion items. Item number 1. Gina, would you like to start, or should we let Andy?
Let Gina start. So what we're going to do is an update on the operating budget first.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and council members. We're going to do a brief overview of where we left off, a one-slide overview. A general fund update. We started off the presentation 2 weeks ago with the preliminary budget starting off at $19.7 million, revenue at $18.3 million. We have added approved salary adjustments, which you will see this evening, of $71,214. And then we had proposed supplemental requests of for recreation, 2 part-time park maintenance workers, 1 part-time facilities coordinator, 1 part-time maintenance worker, 1 public works part-time permit technician. For recreation, spider boxes, planning, circulation element for $75,000. Recreation, John Deere tractor, and this is a 5-year annual amount for purchase of $15,455, and Wayne Macon electrical infrastructure project for $530,000. That total amount in the preliminary proposed budget is $20,489,347 as compared to our revenue estimate, which went up slightly for next year based on revenues achieved by adding those positions, as well as the spider box revenue source, for $18,384,367, and this creates a structural deficit at this time of $2.1 million. And what we're going to do next is present the CIP program, and at the end of that program we'll come back to an updated slide showing all the general fund impacts.
Before we go into the CIP, I do want to make a couple of global comments with respect to the CIP budgets. Following that, I will turn it over to Brian Petrie and Chad Blaze to walk us through the specific capital projects. So if you have a copy of your CIP budget, I'd like to draw your attention to page number 4 of the document. Page number 4 of the book, the CIP book. So this is a 1-year snapshot of the various capital projects fund that the city maintains. To the left, of beginning at the left, is the various capital projects funds. And the next column shows estimated beginning fund balance. What that represents is the amount of cash we currently have on hand for each one of these capital projects funds, which we estimate to have on hand by June 30 of this fiscal year. The reason I state that is that So we take a look at the cash we have on hand, say today, and we estimate how much we are going to be spending between now and June 30 of 2017. And come up with a number that we believe will be our beginning balance at the beginning of the fiscal year, which is July 1. So we estimate that we'll have about $14.5 million of all of our capital projects funds. The breakdown is shown there. But what I also want to draw your attention to is the column that says FY 2018 estimated revenues and transfers. The reason that is important, you will see some big numbers in here. Those big numbers, especially with street fund and the storm drain funds and sewer capital projects funds, these are mostly third-party revenues. And when Chad begins to go over these specific capital projects, we'll look at those specific revenues. The only ongoing revenue that we estimate to get this coming fiscal year are small impact fees as a result of 3 potential developments coming into the city next fiscal year. And those developments include the 90-room hotel that we are looking to have at the corner of Hammond and 5th Street. We are also looking to have the small commercial development at the corner of Hidden Valley and Corona Avenue. I believe that is a gas station and a convenience store. And there is a placeholder for 2 potential infill housing, residential housing. We don't know what the chances of that actually coming to fruition is. In any case, based on prior experience, we have put in the provision for 2 of those residential units to be developed. So in terms of how much that is generating in revenue will generate in revenue to the city, to this various specific capital projects funds, you can turn over to page 6 and page 7 of your book. And you can see what the numbers are for each one of these specific capital projects funds. Again, very minimal amount of money is coming in this next year through development improvements here in the city of Norco. And there are no revenues projected for the remaining of the 5 years because at this time we have nothing confirmed for subsequent 4 years other than this first year. But again, the point here is that, again, the CIP funds, as you will see when we go through this presentation, most of them will run out of money or have already run out of money beginning this fiscal year. And there are no revenues projected in subsequent fiscal year. But let me point out, though, that Measure A is one of the capital projects fund here, and Chad will be going over that. That is the only capital project fund that we have ongoing revenues as a result of the half a cent transportation tax allocation to the city of Norco. And right at the very right-hand corner of page 4 is what we estimate will be our cash balance as of the end of next fiscal year, 2017-2018. With that, I don't know if you have any questions pertaining to this quick overview of the revenues that we anticipate to come in next fiscal year. If not, yes.
Could we just jump back to the general fund update? And I just want to make sure if these are just placeholders. On the circulation element for $75,000, if we left that as a placeholder, could we do this just with the Planning Commission to clean up the basic requirements if there's any state requirements in lieu of doing a full-blown circulation element at this time?
Yeah, what we could do in-house is just take out the old data and inconsistencies, just to clean up. It's not going to be any projection of long-range development that we need to anticipate, because that would require studies, but we can do a cleanup and take out all the old data, and we can do that in-house.
And that would satisfy any obligations we have at this time?
Yep.
And then the second is on the Wayne Macon electrical infrastructure. Brian, when do you anticipate we'll go out to bid on that?
Plan check is scheduled for Monday to be submitted.
Okay.
And we're hoping for a quick turnaround on that. And so if that's...
30 days? Or?
Yeah. I would hope much sooner than that.
Okay.
Boilerplate and everything is ready to go. It's just a matter of the plans being reviewed and approved. So we'll ask for a speedy review on that. And then I'm thinking in less than 30 days is my objective.
Okay.
So be out to bid, and then, so that puts us probably back in August to you guys, maybe at least that first meeting in August, possibly with an award of contract.
So right now, the 530, we're going to use as a placeholder also, and hopefully the bids come in
Yes, sir.
less. Okay. And then what we added was Corridon staging area.
Yes, sir. We've added this.
Get that with the CIP update.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just stay with the general fund update at this time.
Right.
That's the only questions I had. Thank you. Kevin?
Did we find out on the Wayne Macon electrical job what it would cost to go to? We'd asked, in other words, what would the additional lights cost? How much savings would there be over 2-3 years in electrical costs and things?
The actual, for example, if we were to upgrade to LED lighting and to put in the metal Musco poles, we're looking at an increase of a little less than $400,000 on top of the backbone. The payback on that is 16 and a half years.
What about just putting in, can you put the new lights, the LED lights on top of the existing poles?
Yes, you could.
What would the...
Well, I'd have to do a study on that, because we'd have to do a study on that. And I don't have the exact breakdown for what the LED lights would be on the existing poles, but I could obtain that for you.
Yeah, I'd just like to know if there would be a significant cost savings if we were able to do that version.
The savings, we would receive savings. Your payback is still going to be somewhere probably between still 15 years on that, where you would recover your cost based on your energy reduction that you would have. So that, I mean, it's something we can take a look at. One of the things I do want to note in this plan that we are proposing, we will be designing that so that if in the future we wanted to come back and add the Musco poles or lighting, that would be available to us. The infrastructure is there.
Well, if you get a chance, let me know. I'd like to know at least what the lights would be with the save, because they're better lights, make it brighter, that kind of stuff. Thank you. That's all I have.
Go ahead, Ted.
Brian, I know you had the John Deere tractor in here. Wasn't that 5,000 at the last one? Now it's 15?
No, it's no. I think that didn't. The number is correct. It's that's for replacement, to obtain replacement in a 5-year period.
Or a 5-year period, so
Yes.
it's 15,455 for the next 5 years.
Expecting in 5 years, this is what the tractor would cost at retail.
And before we, go ahead and approve these things, can we get an idea what a lease would cost us on that?
Absolutely. Actually, we are looking at that right now.
Okay, because that's a lot of funds over there.
Yeah, and the one company that we are talking to, Kubota, John Deere also offers a program, and they also do a lease to purchase, and also they offer a used lease program too. So we're obtaining that data. And that is something that if we had the funding appropriated, we could bring that back to the council.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess the other one's for Andy. Andy, that on the Measure A, or the streets funds, none of these numbers that you have in here on page 4, they don't reflect the new SB 130 funding or 132 funding, whatever that was.
None of it is included here.
So that's not even in this.
Yeah, the funding allocation from the recently approved SB 1 is included in our gas tax fund, which is an operating fund, and I think we had that discussion at the last, I'm sorry. So the city's allocation from the SB 1 legislation that was recently signed by the governor has been included in the city's gas fund, which is an operating fund. Okay. And that is part of what we discussed last 2 weeks when we discussed the operating budget.
So the 671,615 is our normal Measure A money.
Yeah, coming from our CTC.
And then, so the other one is in the general fund. Okay, thank you.
The gas tax fund.
Thank you.
Robin, Berwin, any questions on the general fund update? Okay, thank you. Chad?
All right, good evening, Council. Yeah, I'm just going to give you a quick introduction. This is the CIP presentation, and Brian and I are going to review this as quickly as we can for you. There's a lot of items to discuss, a lot of projects we're going to be moving forward on. Brian has the first 2 slides related to parks, but again, as we started off, this is one of our slides that just show the summary of the various CIP projects. As you can see, by the end balance, we certainly are going to be doing quite a bit of work if we actually accomplish what we are trying to do. We're going to pretty much probably spend about $20 million for the year. Again, it's probably not going to get that full amount, but like I said, we're trying to show and to accomplish as much as we can within the next fiscal year. So with that, we will change it up, and the first one we're going to talk about is parks.
Thank you, Chad. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is the Park Improvement Fund 141. Our beginning fund balance is $347,194. We're looking for in this particular area, there will be a general fund transfer of $540,000. This is in regards to the discussion we just had related to the Wayne Macon electrical backbone switchgear infrastructure project. Other projects that are identified in here are $100,000. This is the remaining balance in the Ingalls Park Capital Project Fund. We're working with our master plan committee to prioritize the remaining balance of these projects. This will complete our sound system project, which is already encumbered, and this balance will finish off the various projects that we have. We won't finish them all, but our master plan committee will be working to prioritize that last $100,000. The balance in the public art projects are complete. We do have a transfer in here of $10,000. That came from the Day of the Cowboy. Just want to note of that. The Day of the Cowboy committee will take a look at either another public art project or it'll go into hardscape landscape. The balance in this fund was earmarked for landscaping, which we're working with the master plan committee on, and it is also to include signage or a display sign at the corner of 6th Street and 6th Street and Crestview. Thank you. Please, I got my C's mixed up there. Corridon's on my next thing on the slide. So anyway, the balance of that will go towards those various projects. The Corridon staging area, this is a $55,000 request or allocation. I understand that this project has been submitted to FEMA. We do have a meeting in the field tomorrow, specifically on 2 projects. One, the Corridon staging area, and the second project is the Hamner slope slippage project. As you recall, Public Works came back and engineering to you earlier in this year and asked for an appropriation, and this is the K-Rail project. That's for reimbursement. They're evaluating that, and they're also evaluating potential mitigation for that project for long-term solutions, which they may want to fund so that it doesn't happen again. Although that'll be a balancing act between what happens with the bridge in the future, et cetera. So we do have a meeting tomorrow morning with FEMA, and their representative from District 6 will be here to do a walkthrough with both Public Works and Parks Division in, and then we'll look at those particular projects. Just to add to that, in FEMA, we also have requests for forced labor reimbursement also as part of our project thing. So even though this funding is to reopen the area and to correct the sinkhole that we have there, we're looking at about 55,000 was the engineering earmark that we have for that project. And that includes some engineering documents as well for us to bid that job. Now, in saying that, our request to FEMA, this is $55,000 as well. So based on what that comes in, we're hoping that FEMA will agree to this and reimburse it. We'll know that in the field. They also have agreed to work with and assist us in working with the Army Corps of Engineers, who has some additional responsibility in here. So that concludes those particular projects.
If I could just make one thing clear, and that is the $55,000 for the corridor and staging area. If the City Council approves this amount of this project to be done, that money will be coming out of the general fund. There is no money currently available in the Parks Improvement Capital Project Fund to do this project. And when we do a final recap for the general fund later on after this capital improvement project presentation, you will see that coming through on the general fund side. I just want to make sure that if you like to have discussion on that now, this is the appropriate time to do so.
Can I say something?
Berwin, you go right ahead.
Thank you, sir. Okay, this corridor and staging area, I realize, is this talking about the slope to get down into the river?
This is the actual sinkhole that started along the trail that migrates along that edge and down into the river. Yes, sir.
Okay, where's the sinkhole at?
The sinkhole is just to the north of the trailhead at the staging area. So you have the trail that comes in off of Corridon.
Right.
And about, I don't know, 75 yards down that, the sinkhole starts and then runs west down to the river. And it stops kind of at the bottom of at the trailhead at the bottom of that toe slope right there. Before there's kind of a lip. It's the one where we always have a right, someone always falls off right there. But that's about at the location where the sinkhole stops. The sinkhole is approximately almost 20 feet deep at its deepest point.
Is it close to that little warm-up arena?
It'd be just to the north of that, just to the left of it.
Okay, now the road going off of the staging area into the river, is that ours or is that the county's?
Part of it's ours and the rest then becomes Army Corps of Engineers.
Are they going to reimburse us for?
That's the discussion we've had with FEMA, and we have had preliminary discussions with Army Corps of Engineers, and it is something that we're going to have to look at. It's going to take a while to get to that point. The Corps is willing to look at it and determine what it is. One of my fears is the Corps may just say shut it all down until this is finally resolved somewhere down the line. The issue with FEMA is that the Army Corps of Engineers, when they go through their disaster relief, it is a totally separate process from all other government agencies. Because they're a federal agency, they do their own project for reimbursement, so that it's looked at much differently. The folks from FEMA, though, said they would help us walk through that process. We've been in contact with what we call the real estate division of the Army Corps, who would be heading this and bringing in their people to evaluate this. We also will be asking them to evaluate another location off of River Drive.
Well, if part of this is going to be used to fill in that sinkhole, correct?
That's correct.
And
to pay for Converse Engineering, who actually did a review study on this particular sinkhole for why it happened and what type of mitigation needs to occur for it not to happen again.
Well, that slope going down the hill, if that part theirs and part ours, why don't you talk to them about permanently repairing that instead of putting Band-Aids on it, because every time we get the big rains, it washes out.
We most certainly will talk to them about it.
And if we're going to just keep throwing money in there to repair it, I'm totally against repairing it, because it's never going to be right as long as we have erosion and like that. We had a lot of hard rains this year, but we really had a hard one last Sunday's week ago that would have caused a lot of erosion. I don't know how it rained over there, but
My biggest fear at that location was the slippage of the sides of the sinkhole. And just to, the actual sinkhole is a little bit up from that downward slope going into the river. The challenge I have is that I was afraid of where the trail connects close to it. I didn't want any more slippage caving in from the sides and someone get too close and it caves in. An alternative that we've discussed is to actually put fencing around that hole and veer the trail around it, and that would be a temporary fix. My fear is to have more erosion at the location without going through the engineering mitigation that was recommended.
okay, thank you.
My questions are, ownership of the slope, is that city or is that all Corps?
We own about, from that trailhead, when you enter into the downward, we own about, I would say, the first 20 feet, maybe a little less, is ours. Then after that, it becomes Corps property.
And is any of that slope manufactured?
At just above, about where our property line is, some of that is manufactured, yes.
In that relationship to the sinkhole?
None.
Is not in the manufactured area?
No, it's just to the north of it. There's a couple different elements that the engineering report identified. One was water that was coming underneath. There's a ravine just to the north of that a little bit.
Right.
That we had water coming in from that particular area that caused part of it. I've never had a sinkhole in that area anywhere near this in 20 years that I know of. And part of it is water that came in off of the street. And then there is a question related to the property just to the north of us. That we had like a perfect storm and all three contributed to that. The remedy is a riprap of different layers that would bind that, and at the end there's a drain that would be put in to help push that to that ravine so it actually ends up in the river but in a different location.
Would the possibility exist?
And away from the trail.
Correct. Would the possibility exist to create a new trail that would traverse that slope in lieu of basically just vertical?
Yeah, the problem is that trail is, the hole is really to the left of that slope and then runs down to the end. So yes, traversing that is a possibility. That would probably be a response to some of what Berwin's talking about.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And maybe be a cure, because we own that first 20 feet. So that might be a cure for future mitigation. But as far as where the hole is or where the hole starts, it's not really relative to that entry point off of the parking area or staging area.
Thank you, Brian.
Oh, sorry. Fell asleep there. I know. Okay. The next area that we have is the 140, which is general government projects. In this proposal, we have $516,088 of beginning fund balance. And here we have a carryover. We are out to bid on the Neil Snipes Playground project. This is a replacement project and bringing it to the current standards that are from ASTM and ADA. And also in here, we have the City Hall parking lot project. Our City Hall parking lot has had, many years before it has had any covering. The last is almost 5 years ago is the last slurry we had, and that was just a patch job. This project actually is a grind and overlay, and actually replacing some areas where we are down to just dirt in the parking lot, where some areas have worn completely away. This also includes the Sheriff's Department section. We do have a discussion, and we think we may get a better price. The school district has some of the same issues, and we feel if we were to combine both projects, we'd probably get a better price overall for unit costs. So this would be giving us an additional, as opposed to having to look at it, we could go to a slurry project and we would get 10 to 15 years out of this parking lot before any other major work would be done.
Do you have a question on that?
On the Neil Snipes playground equipment, we're looking maybe to do a land swap, and at least for the front of it. And
this would be beyond that land swap area.
Past?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
There's actually where the swap would be, where I believe it would be, actually there's a delineation that's pretty clear on the land, and the playgrounds would be to the west of that.
So you're going to push it past where it is now?
Well, where it is existing right now is where we would replace it, and that isn't part of the land swap that I am aware of. The land swap is near to the east section of the park.
Right. All right, thanks, Brian.
On the parking lot, the school district, all they did was a slurry seal.
Yes.
Here recently, that how much are you planning on grinding? Not a complete reconstruction, but just like an inch and a half?
No, this is a complete regrind, and in some sections, we're going to have to actually go down to the build back up. There are some sections there that we are down to just dirt. Sections of the pavement are crumbling, even along where some of our drains are, and so we have some pretty bad sections. Now, one of the things that the school district's done is that they have slurried. At least they are helping try to extend their life of that asset. We have not. The last slurry we did was 5 years ago, and prior to that, I don't know if I can remember when we slurried it last. So that's how you just can't maintain your parking lots that way. And this one is actually becoming a trip hazard in various locations.
I would just suggest that maybe you look at just cutting out those bad sections, okay, and just repave those and then slurry all of it. And the reason I go that way is that you're not going, unless you do everything with the school district, it's not a competitive number because it's so cut up that there's nowhere to move with all the parking and the ins and the outs.
We actually have at our school district joint meeting on Monday, that's part of the topic of discussion.
Okay. Yeah, because you have no footage, Brian.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I could add a few more parking lots around town, though, if you wanted.
And a few streets, if you'd like.
Sure. Okay. And that would be the ideal thing, but it just doesn't work for what we're doing in the parking lots versus what's in the street and how Chad does his bid. So, but I think if we could combine with the school district, I think then we could get the increase in square footage that makes it competitive. You're correct.
Okay.
I can't wait to see what everybody says when we redo the parking lot and our streets are in such bad shape.
That's coming in the next part.
You're curious about what's going to be said? Or would you like?
That's all I have unless there's any other questions.
All right. So we will move on to trails. So the beginning balance is expected to be $218,000. It's actually about $50,000 higher than I originally anticipated. That's what we were kind of talking about. a few months ago back when we were talking about 6th Street, where they were going to do that section and doing California, et cetera, we had about $150,000 remaining to spend. We recently got a little bit of allocation from some impact fees that were paid from the Lewis commercial development, so that increased to $218,000. All these projects except Sierra 6 to Detroit are carryovers from previous years, future years CIP budget. It was planned for this year, and now we're carrying them forward into this new budget year. So it is, but we're not showing any projects in future years because there's no money allocated for future years. So that's why we didn't put any proposed projects, because there's no money allocated to them. So of the money that we have, we brought those two first projects. Those were already previously approved in this current CIP project, which is Bronco from Corridon past Shawnee. That's a new trail fence. And then Arapahoe, Appaloosa, Stetson. Again, that's a new trail fence. And the 6th Street is really, in my mind, a placeholder right now, in that we still haven't had the discussion as whether or not we're going to stick with wood or if we're going to go to vinyl. But we need to get that resolved. Again, going back to the Streets, Trails, Utilities Commission, find out if there's a different change or thought on that we can bring back to council to find out which direction we're going to go. So I left it as a placeholder. If we end up not doing anything on 6th Street, then obviously that money would be reallocated to another project that we bring back to council. And with the little amount of money that was brought to my attention recently, we quickly selected Sierra 6 to Detroit, needing an upgrade. It's a small section that we could probably do with those funds that would have a nice little impact in that area near the McDonald's going up to Detroit. So that's just an area we highlighted. And then we just leave a little bit of unspecified trail maintenance for other projects that we may come up that we may want to do. But again, the goal is to try to spend all the money by the end of the year. We actually had spent almost and completed all the projects except for 6th Street within 6 months of last year. So these projects can go pretty quickly once we get them out. And most likely we would probably bid all these out at once, other than obviously 6th Street, so we get the best unit price for all the work that we're intending to do. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Chad, on this, and it should have been a general fund question more than a CIP question. We're allocating the unspecific trail improvements, and generally you've been allocating about $25,000 a year in DG just to patch up. Is that what we've done in the past?
For maintenance, yes.
For maintenance. And you know this better than I do. We have, and I didn't see it down here on our updates, we've got to get those trails rolled. To pour DG in them and not pack them. We've already seen the improvement in the LMDs, and the DG has not washed out as great. The trails are better maintained, and it stays better. And we need to start putting that practice into place throughout the rest of the city, so we're not going back continually on these trails and rethrowing DG back where it's just going to wash out again. And so, and I see that we're sitting at $220,000 expenses, but unless we start putting these trails up to a standard, a maintenance standard, we're just throwing money away all the time.
Sure.
So that's what I'm just saying. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I think we need to get the actual surface completed, and I would like to see the trail fence done. I mean, we just had our LMD4 meeting last night. There's going to be a lot of extra fencing, but we have no place to store it when it comes out. Of course, the poles aren't worth it good, but the rails are. So, but I'm just looking at this and thinking we need to start thinking about packing those trails and getting them compacted again. Thank you, Mayor.
With the Streets and Trails Commission on these, would you also make a note? We had talked about it at a previous meeting when we had the 6th Street conversation, to look at California in lieu of from North to 6th on fencing and trail reconstruction. And also that the NHA top 10 trail list, if any of those could be incorporated.
And currently none of those that are on NHA's current list are incorporated on this short list.
But maybe with discussion with the commission that you bring that up again and see if there's
Yeah,
Something that
and
can
that's
be
the intent, and that's
Okay.
why California is not in here in discussion, is that California is a far bigger, more expensive project that needs to be done as a whole house to do it right.
Correct.
But we're still going to bring it back to talk about it, so there's a clear understanding of what's going to be involved, the difficulties of trying to do it because of the easements in that area, and in trying to create a clear path and consistent path for the trails, et cetera. So there's a long history with California of having the right-of-way, then we gave it back, and it's created some functional problems of trying to achieve what the council would like to see occur. But we plan to review that with the STUC committee so they understand and see if there's a way to figure that out. And then we can certainly relay and discuss the actual list that the NHA gave and explain why a lot of those sites really are unrealistic in regards to similar issues of California, as far as there's right-of-way issues we don't have. Some of them are on Army Corps property. So there's various things, but we can outline those so there's a clear understanding of what NHA would like and the hurdles that we'd have to overcome to try to achieve those and bring those to council.
Okay, and my last item was, months ago, you and I talked about a bid process that we would go out to all various fence contractors and try to drive down the unit cost, and then that way would allow us to contract with one contractor over say a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year period, based on units, less than 5,000 lineal feet, over 5,000 lineal feet. Do you recall that conversation?
Yes.
And
No, and
I mean, what would be the terminology that we would use with that?
That is part of the problem. We haven't quite figured out how to cleanly do that type of request. The other issue is candidly, since there's not a defined funding beyond this year, I've kind of dropped that idea, but it may be a relevant idea for Brian because he's got so much work in LMD4.
And that's what I was thinking, because I know cities like Irvine, Orange, they have those bid type packages, so that they've driven that number down, and then you say you put that over a 3-year period, and then your cost of labor or material increases on top of that.
We've looked at his projects at Dominic, Chad, and I. We have about 46,000 linear feet, almost closer to 47,000 linear feet to do in the phase 2 of replacement of trail fencing for LMD number 4. So combining this, I would imagine we're going to get a pretty good unit price.
Right.
And obviously, these projects could be combined with that unit price, and we'll probably have to work with John on language on that, just to make sure it's clear if we do it by scale like that. I'm not sure exactly how that would be constructed, but obviously we can combine put the phases of linear footage in the projects and do it all as one big project citywide.
Okay. And if you want, I can give you a couple of cities that do it that way. That would help you for format, but I think with your footage, that maybe if we could combine and go in that direction, we may get more bang for our buck with these projects.
Mr. Mayor?
Our last bid, and we did 14,000 linear feet, was $10 a linear foot. So I would imagine at 46 plus another 10 at least, or whatever that is, we're going to get a better price than that. So.
Berwin?
Yeah, one question, Chad, on these side streets like Sierra 6 to Detroit, is that going to be the white fence, or is that going to go back to, we use the wooden fence on that to upgrade it?
The standard is the vinyl. We're not putting any wood fence in anywhere.
Okay, thank you.
Andy, we talked about California being an arterial and maybe utilizing tump fees to do that. Is that possible?
No, for trail.
No, I meant, but also for the street, but along with that, do the trails. Is it possible, if we're fixing that street, that would include the improvements on the sides?
TOMF monies are available for California. Then the TOMF fund cannot be used for trail.
Right. TUMP specifies it can only pay for the actual widening, actually creating a new lane. That's all they pay for. They will not pay for any of the parkway area that has to be maybe moved or rehabilitated.
Got it. That's what my question was. Okay, thank you.
And I haven't looked ahead yet, but is California on your 5-year plan somewhere?
For trails?
For streets, and when we get that, just...
I don't recall. I'll have to look myself.
Okay, I mean,
I don't think it is, but like I said, it's. I try not to put projects out in the future unless I have the understanding of what I'm going to do. So I would want to have my trail money allocated, my street money allocated. I'd also look at any type of infrastructure, i.e. water, sewer, storm drain. Those are issues on California. So before putting it out there as an assumption something's going to get done, I like to have it all put together so that when I present it, it's something I'm committing to and I have a clear understanding that I can present to the
Absolutely, and I understand. My thought on the process is because it's a very important street and an arterial into the city, that might be something that you could take your Streets and Trails Utility Commission to start working on in hopes that we can get that completed in the next 5 years and start developing that idea of, because I know you have storm drain projects going that one plan too in the future along with that, but that trail and that street do need to be fixed, and I'm hoping we can do it in the next 5 years. That's what I'm saying. If we start there on the process of Streets and Trails part and start working in the discussion, maybe we can come up with a good plan.
Right.
Thank you.
Seek some direction here, because the reason we're doing this today is to make sure that the City Council is aware of the specific projects that we are bringing back to you from now for approval as part of the 2017-2018 Capital Improvement Program budget. I think we've had a lot of discussions so far on this Trails Improvement Fund, specifically whether we should look at the list that was provided by NHR, or whether we should even be budgeting for this various trails for these particular streets because of the issue dealing with not having the existing trails compacted, or whether we should be allocating money elsewhere, such as California. And what we have is $220,000 for this coming fiscal year. So, direction from City Council whether these are the projects we'll be bringing back to you 3 weeks from today for approval as part of the CIP approval, or whether we should ignore everything that is on this schedule right now and basically say to be determined. So I do want some clarification along that line so we know what we're bringing back to you.
I don't mind to be determined, but I'd like to have somewhat of a budget of the cost to do California from North to 6th as far as fence replacement and trail reconstruction.
If I had to guess, you're
$220,000?
No, you're $500,000 to $1 million.
Really?
Because you have significant issues. It's not just a straight line. You have now properties that have encroached what would have been the parkway. It's now their legal property because we gave the road back. And those are the issues where it literally it meanders, there's a house in the way, and then the trail goes again. And that's why, again, functionally, my request to the council is there's a clear understanding from me as staff that we want to look at California. Well, let me spend the next year figuring California out. Because until that had occurred, that wasn't a priority that was expressed. Now it's clear that's something we'd like to have addressed, not only at trails, but also streets, which we will find out there's budgetary issues for the street. The street needs a lot of work on itself. So I would much prefer to be able to sit down, staff-wise, identify all the issues or not. We can talk about that with the STUC committee, get them up to speed, understanding what the issues are, maybe, and whether or not they feel what the way we can make a trail occur, would that be satisfactory to the community? It's not going to be a straight line, but here's maybe how we can do it. Would that work? Because again, I'm engineering-wise, I'm simply going to look at what I legally can do within the right-of-way left to me. And working with that, they can give me ideas about, well, if you do this, you do that. No, it's not a big deal because all of a sudden, if I have to switch to the side of the road, that might be something they don't want to do. They don't want to cross if that's a hazard issue, but I want their input. It's because their experience tell me those are viable options. So that way, when I bring something forward, you have a full picture of everything that needs to be done, because really, if we do it, we want to do it once. Because if I'm doing a trail side, it's going to involve the street side because of the issues that are on California. So I just want to make sure that I bring something to you. I already have the clear message that this is something you want looked at. Give me the time over the next year to figure that out so that I can get you a number, and then we figure out, ask questions, how do I get that money from you? Because that's a bigger issue, and there's no trail money beyond this. In some cases, you'll see in the next few slides, there's no street money. And so California, 5 years down the road, could be sitting there because simply there's no money. Not that there's a plan, there's just no money. So this case, I think having these projects as just as a placeholder, I think are reasonable. At least gives us something we can do. If we determine that California and working over the next few months, it's just not viable. I can spend this money. If you want me just to hold on to it and come back later on, probably, maybe by the end of the year, I might have you a report that I can provide you to tell you what needs to be done in California. I would venture to say, with that, we would still not be able to do California, even with the plan, because of what's required. But again, I'm happy to create a plan. I think it's very appropriate.
And you could work with that with the Streets and Trails Commission.
Yep, absolutely.
Go ahead, Ted.
And Andy made a good point. Right now, I'm more for making a safe spot or a trail, a surface to walk on, the horses traverse on, the people traverse on, because they are pedestrian equestrian trails, rather than I see spending $50,000 in 3 sections to put new trail fence in, to be honest with you. It doesn't do any good to have a nice new trail fence if what you're walking on is not safe. So if my direction is those areas those 3 sections you have the new trail fencing, I would not go there. I would rather see you get the surface correct, work on a good maintenance standard on those things, and get them so they don't erode. And then I know that when LMD4 starts pulling those fences out in the next year, I know not all that material is good. He doesn't have a place to store it. I think you do over off of Bluff. So you need to work together and capture as much as that usable material as you can. And then there's some justification for it. And I just, that's my opinion on what to do with this money, because you got very little, and I'd rather see it so that the trails are at least something somebody can walk their horse on, or they can walk down, versus at this point worrying about a brand new vinyl fence. Thank you.
One thing I would say in that regard is, I think what you're asking for is more of an O&M thing versus a CIP thing. It can be done as a CIP, but I would go to the issue of, like Brian's talked about, I think in the past, is we don't really have a maintenance standard that's been established yet that I think the STUC committee has actually wanted to try to achieve. So part of that would be getting that and deciding if is that the minimal standard satisfactory, what you will see, and then it becomes an O&M thing. Are we going to put the money in the operational fund to maintain that? Because just because we roll it once, like you said, rain comes down, 1 or 2 storms, it could be wiped out again. So I just don't want to make sure we're chasing our tail. And again, focus-wise, this particular fund has really been used for putting fence up, not necessarily creating a new trail or maintaining a trail. It absolutely can be done to rehab a trail, but that's why I want to get direction from council, is that if we're going to go that route, I think there's an issue there too, is we don't have a maintenance standard yet, other than the standard that developers put in, which I think is unrealistic for us to maintain that, especially with the funds that we don't have in the operational budget for that. So again, happy to do those types of work. I just think we need to make it realistic in that to achieve what your goal would be, what my goal would be to do that is I need more money in the O&M to do it. And how's it going to be done? And that standard hasn't been set yet. So as I would assume was one of those tasks, again, over this next year is develop that maintenance standard and then bring it back to council, say, look, if going forward and if money was provided and this is how we were going to maintain our trails, is this what the council wants? And then what's the cost to do that? Because again, maybe it turns out at that point, like if you mentioned before, is maybe it would be something we farm out to Brightview. Because if they do it now in the LMDs, maybe they can do a unit price for that. And now that it's at a certain level, they will maintain it. But they're going to want it to get it to a certain level. And if that's my task to do that over time, then I'm happy to do that.
Just to add to what Chad's saying is that we do have a standard for contractual services for maintenance. The challenge from the Public Works side on the bridle trail system is that so we do have a standard, we could follow that standard. The problem is it still requires frequency. And if you don't have the personnel to maintain that, it's very difficult to even meet that. You wouldn't be able to meet that standard. And that's the real challenge. Even if we were to go in, reconstruct, regrade, compact them, which would give you less frequency in there, you still have a standard you need to maintain. And that's the challenge if you don't have the personnel to do that. And we wouldn't be able to do it if we didn't have contract money to do that. So that's how the districts are able that's how we're able to hold the contractor to a certain standard. So that's the real challenge for us with the rest of our trail infrastructure.
First of all, it wasn't this council that gave the land back to California, and there's people sitting here who raised a lot of cane when they did that, just so we're clear. I think there was several of us that were upset and thought it was crazy. The idea behind that was it would make the street more narrow and it would stop the traffic. It worked A1. Just maybe thinking outside the box, and I'm just throwing this up against the wall. Vaguely in our code, it says that people are responsible for the trails in front of their houses. And actually, when we first put our first trails in '66, the idea was that it would never be a drain on the general fund. And I think that language actually originated in 1966. And I'm wondering if maybe what we need to look at is that people are responsible for the trails in front of their homes. And if they cannot do that, what would it cost per person? Let's say you decide that you want to pay $15 a month to have the city take care of your trail. What would it really cost to take care of every single trail? You could do it yourself, like I do my own trail. The problem is it would go back to Brian's point of the standard in terms of, because people obviously don't have rollers, but I am wondering if what we need to look at is people actually, and across the street if the trail's there. So it's sort of a street trail. If we really look at a way to fund it either through you pay us to do it for you, or you do it yourself and keep it at a certain standard. One of the things that concerns me is in the recent survey, trails weren't very high on the totem pole, as I recall. And I don't think people understand that Norco is large lots to trails to open space. You lose any one of those things and you're going to lose the reason to keep large lots, I think. So I'm just wondering if maybe down the line we need to look at that and just look at what it would cost. I mean, first off, I'd love to know what it would really cost to take care of all the trails in the city of Norco. What would it cost? I mean, if it turns out it's $4 a month or something crazy like that, it might be worthwhile going, okay, you two take care of your trail, or you will pay the city to come and do it for you. And I don't know how you'd get there, but I think it's a discussion we've been avoiding since I've been on council, and it might be something that would create a funding source.
A mile of trail, to answer your question, a mile of trail under maintenance contract would roughly run you about $105 to $110 a mile.
Per year?
Per month.
Okay.
So you're roughly, it's about, for a mile of trail, you're looking at about under $1,300 per month, per mile.
$1,300 a month?
Per year, excuse me, per year.
So like from my house to Riverview, that's a mile, and that's probably don't know, I counted the houses once, I think it's like 47 houses between Riverview and my house, which is exactly a mile. So I'm just wondering, so 47 houses, let's say, $30 a year. It's just
That's a guesstimate. I'm just trying to give you kind of a ballpark figure of what you're...
This issue before comes to an assessment on the homeowners and
No, I guess what my point is then let's take it out of the municipal code. We haven't done that. Let's just take it out of the code. You're not responsible for your trails. That's what it says. So we can avoid that issue, but let's take it out of the code then.
the maintenance issue of it.
I mean, you get my point, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I just think we need to discuss it because obviously we got to find money for the trails. And I'm just trying to figure out a way that we can do that. I'm not looking to tax somebody. What I'm looking for is maybe people will take care of their own trails and we provide the opportunity to do it. So that's all.
Okay, all right. Next item is page 31.
All right, let's go back to council before we move back on Fund 14, on page 25. What direction do we want to give staff on this trail fencing? Leave it as shown?
We can make this to be determined, right, Andy, when it comes back?
We can just leave
Yeah,
it
let's,
alone and
before we do anything and see where we're at,
Absolutely.
because there are some other priorities. And
So to be determined. Erwin, you okay with that?
Yeah, because I'll agree with Ted on the Kelp
Yeah. Robin?
Trail over there.
Kevin? TBD?
Okay, thank you. Okay, page 31, we're going to discuss the water improvements. The water fund. So the water fund beginning balance is about $3.8 million through development fees. We actually got an EPA grant for $485,000. That's for the water treatment expansion. So that's good. And that was something council recently awarded for design. We're expecting to have about $4.8 million in the water fund for CIP. We have several 2 pages worth of projects. Real quick, just highlighting some. The first few are just basic things we do from time to time if we need to, some skated improvements, fire hydrants, valve installations, backflow prevention. Those are pretty much standards we keep in for CIP improvements. We have the 2 million gallon Reservoir Bluff project. That is a design that's going to be under design. And that is currently budgeted for that design. That we anticipate the design to be done sometime in 2018, and then we'll go out, assuming money is available at that point, for actual construction for the actual reservoirs. That's the Bluff property. The water treatment plant, that's the other project that was already approved. That's at this point, that's design and purchase of most of the equipment. It doesn't include the contractor. We will go out to contract later on for that. So that design will take up a good part of this year, this next fiscal year. Reservoir maintenance, again, we're not going to do that this year. It's for future years for coding. Current projects, we're still doing upgrades to the GIS and the work order system. We're finished public works, and again, I'm going to come back to you and show you how that works. The work order system and GIS, we're now integrating parks. For next fiscal year, we're budgeting money because we're going to be integrating finance and building and safety. So we're allocating money for that to pay for that. Then we have Hammond Avenue Waterline Project. That's a big project for us that we just are almost finished with the design. Hopefully we'll have it done by the end of this fiscal year, so we can go out to bid right away in the new fiscal year. That is a full replacement of the water line between 3rd and 4th. In a later project, and I'll reference it now, later in the street fund, it will include resurfacing all of 6th Street of Hamner between 3rd and 4th. So we'll put the pipe in, then we'll redo the street, and we'll get it all done at once. And that's the idea. I'll show you that funding in the street fund later on. but I want to make sure I highlight it. What I'm trying to do for a lot of our projects where we're impacting the road, doing below ground utilities, is if it's possible, we're not doing any future improvements, is let's finish the road for where that improvement was, because usually we do a small section of the road to get it back to condition. Let's just get the whole road done. And that's many of these projects that I'll highlight, we're doing that same thing. So that's where a lot of our street money is going, is where we're doing actual capital projects for water, storm drain, sewer. And so we're matching the streets to get them done so we're not going back. Next big project is Valley View Water Line. Again, that's finishing design. We've been working on that all year. Again, we'll have it in construction early next fiscal year. That one's a terrible water line. It's basically as thin as a beer can. Desperately needs to be replaced. We have some 3rd Street water relocations. That's related to the flood control project where they're doing their large storm drain project. We have some relocations that they're actually going to do for us. We've actually convinced them to do it as part of their project. We designed it. They've incorporated it in their designs. And we're just going to work out a contract that they're still going to bring back to us to bring to council to approve, so their contractor does it on our behalf. Initially, we had to go do all the work and get out of their way before they started. They've actually incorporated the project where the contractors can do everything for us. We're just going to reimburse them for that cost. Then we have the design work that's being done on Reservoir number 1. That's on page 32. And that currently is they've just started that process, and that's just the design of Reservoir. The construction of it would be placed most likely under fiscal year 18-19. We're having some yard security improvements that we're funding. We're going to go through the yard. It needs some upgrades on the fencing. It needs a new security gate, a roll gate. We need to heighten the fences because we've had some security issues off and on. People coming in, mainly people just walking into the yard because the gate's always open. We want to get part of that a security gate that automatically closes so that only staff is on site. We actually have quite a few residents that just come in and dump their materials in our bins. So some improvements there. Plus, it also includes the building. Our building needs some security improvements indoors. We have a lot of equipment in there and technology that we want to safeguard. And then we just have a small amount we leave for unspecified water projects that may come up. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding the water projects.
Mr. Mayor, Chad, on page 31 on the Valley View water line, 6th to River Road, isn't that River Drive?
Probably, yes. Sorry. I will fix that.
Thank you.
Good catch. All right. Nothing else? We'll go to page 66, and we'll talk about Street Improvement Fund.
Go back.
Oh, sorry.
And let's go out a couple of years and let's talk total sources of funds. 31 or 32. They're all kind of shocking to me. So when we look at fiscal year 2019, 20, I see those numbers in parentheses.
Right. Yeah, it clearly indicates there's going to be a deficit going forward. Obviously, we've done the recent rate increase, and that rate increase was reflective of a 10-year CIP. This was reflected at the time, and I've kept it as at least placeholders for projects that I would modify on a year-to-year basis, saying, okay, now that we've determined what money is coming in or expected to be for the next fiscal year, here's the extra projects we'll fund, we'll move the others, and we'll keep pushing that out over the 10-year period, rather than just splitting these out now and saying what's going to be over 10 years, and you're only seeing what you have. I'm leaving them all there as projects. So if money comes in, I can pick any one, because maybe that becomes a priority project. If I eliminate them and they're out of the CIP, technically I have to come back to council for reauthorization. But basically anything that's authorized in this CIP 5-year is technically something I can either move back or bring forward at any time based off of need. So but it does reflect a very large number of costs on a year-to-year basis, but the reality is going forward, I'm only each of these items where it's kind of spaced out $7-8 million a year. We probably are only going to get about maybe $2 to $3 million of projects that we may be able to do. And again, year to year, it'll be adjusted to actually reflect what projects we do, and then we just push it.
So in 5 years, we're short with these projects $23 million.
Well, technically, yeah. I mean, as far as what I'm attempting to do, but the reality is that with I'm pushing everything out. Yeah, I just want to give a big window because this is really lumped everything in. Is really what's identified in the master plan of things that we need to improve and do. So we're just really keeping it there to kind of show the big picture. This is the money we need if we want to get everything done, but it's going to get. It's only going to get done as money is available.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Just to clarify this, since this is one of these documents that's going to be public eventually, can we get an asterisk on all those so it doesn't look like, I mean, we just asked, we got a water increase, we just asked people to pay for more, and I know we're on tenure, but it looks like we're doing, or we're going to put them into debt. Yeah. Just something to explain that, just a footnote.
Yeah, one of the things that is not shown here, obviously, is revenues that will be coming in as a result of the water rate increase. That is not yet reflected here. Revenues, and then how much that is going to be available to transfer from the operating fund into.
Yeah.
And recognizing again, as Chad said, he's consolidating what it amounts to a 10-year CIP. 5-year
That's
CIP.
just a footnote.
Yeah.
All right. On page 32. Hamner Avenue Bridge, 24-inch main line. And this is going out to 2021. Now, obviously, that's in conjunction with the bridge.
Yes.
The new bridge.
Yes.
And would we be able to get, 2022 on that? So, depending on construction of the bridge, that number could slide out.
Yes, you can move up, absolutely.
And, but would we be able to get help on something like that, on that main line, like from CDA or?
Well, no, because
or is that just going to be our burden?
It's our burden, like it will be for CDA to have their water line go through the bridge, or anybody else who wants to have a line going through there.
Right.
It's entirely burdened on that entity. So again, we're just budgeting, recognizing we're getting, I think it's $70 million to build the bridge that we have to fund at that time. But we want them to do for us is put our pipeline through the bridge at the time, and then that way they redo the road, et cetera. So we're just going to budget that money that we think it would cost us. And both CDA and anyone else who anticipates a need to have access through the cells and the bridge will do the same.
And can you charge for that access?
I don't know.
Cells?
I don't know. I know the bridge, it belongs in it's part of the jurisdiction of the city of Norco, but I don't know regarding the practice of charging entities for use of the bridge. So I apologize.
We go through those cells.
They'll certainly be paying for their share of the cost to bring it through.
Well, sure. But they have plenty of money. Why couldn't we charge them a lease, too?
Now, we can try.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Okay. So slide 66, or page 66, the next slide, which is street improvement fund. In the beginning balance is $2.7 million. We're expecting money of $898,000. Now that money is only going to be used, and this is specific for, we've been working this whole year on trying to obtain the right-of-ways for the properties that have not yet been widened between 5th and 3rd. TUMP pays for that widening, i.e. where the auto Lubentune is at 5th and Hamner, and other locations along there, all the way to 3rd, any place that hasn't been widened yet, we're trying to acquire that property. And again, we're just asking them to grant it. We're not offering to pay for anything so that we can do the widening. And then actually we'll do the widening, and TUMP will pay us up to $898,000. That's their internal calculation for adding a lane in that section where the right-of-way is between those areas. Because again, we've widened most of that area, but there's key areas that haven't been developed that need to be widened. And that would finish off that area between 5th and 3rd. So TUMP has allocated money for us to do this. So when we move forward into this next fiscal year, if we're able to obtain all or most of those requests or grant of the property from the property owners, we'll move forward and actually widen those areas because TUMP money is available to do that. We will initially fund it, but then we get reimbursed from TUMP. But these are all funds that we're accounting and assuming that we would get if we actually move forward with that project. So we do have trying to finish off that stuff that's been going on for many years as far as widening Hamner. So that's what that money is for. So with those funds, we potentially could have $3.8 million for street improvements. Please keep in mind, also I point out that we're not showing future projects on this because we're expecting to expend all the money in this fund, which is mainly from impact fees, almost or entirely from impact fees. And since if we're successful and if we achieve our goal of doing all the projects, there will be no money left after that or another source of revenue that's going to replenish it like Measure A has its annual source. Street fund does not. It's only impact fees. So we've chosen not to elect or try to determine what projects we may do in future years because there's not any dedicated source. So with that, a lot of these projects are related to, that I'm going to discuss, are related to the work that's been going on this year, which I've been happy with, which is the dual left turns and right turns from Hammond onto 6th, from 2nd onto Hammond onto 2nd, and the project that you've already approved, that'll be part of tonight's agenda, which is the dual left turns at Hammond Hidden Valley. All these are meant to help with traffic flow. Obviously, Silver Lakes has an impact at 6th and Hammond. The dual left turn lanes and the dual right turn lanes onto the freeway will be hopefully really improve flow of traffic there. Same thing on 2nd Street and Hammond related to the college traffic that occurs. A lot of these funding sources here that are identified are related to that and getting that work done. We are very close to submitting our draft plans to Caltrans. And that process is the tough part. We've already worked with them to get to this point, and we think we're in line with what they want to see, but they go through the review process. So hopefully, knock on wood, by December, I'm done with Caltrans. They give me all the approvals, and I can actually go out to bid and get these projects started. But that's our window we're shooting for. But a lot of the funding sources for that work is being done out of this fund. So real quickly, we have a couple of placeholders that we commonly put in here, overlay of unspecific streets. If something comes up, we want to do unspecified street striping, but we have those 2nd Street turn pocket, the 6th Street turn pocket, again, some unspecified money for widening. One of the few actual street projects that are using this fund, a lot of our streets are being done under Measure A. I've allocated Corona Avenue, 4th to 5th. That'll be done. It's actually 5th to Frontier, but we just called it 4th to 5th because there's a section of Corona that's actually in pretty good condition. So we're allocating for that to be redone. We actually just got the bids for that in, and we got very favorable bids on that, lower than the engineer's estimate, so that's looking good. Mustang Lane, that's an interesting one. We specifically brought that ahead because that's actually a private street that the city long ago, 40 years ago, agreed to maintain it, even though we don't have it. So, and it's in terrible condition. And the residents brought it to our attention. We had several meetings, et cetera. So, it's got large potholes on it. It needs to be, that's basically just dirt at this point. So our recommendation is what plan is actually develop a design and actually propose to fix the street. But my recommendation is going to be that we actually get a new agreement with them to basically vacate that maintenance requirement because we don't technically or shouldn't maintain private roads. And so we would ask them as a condition of maintaining the road and putting it to a brand new condition, it's a full reconstruct on this one, is that a condition would be we want to vacate the current easement and get a new easement so we can still maintain the storm drain, the sewer, and the water that is on that street, but we would no longer maintain the road. And that is something they've indicated they would be okay with in general, as far as a community that I've met with. But I think it's a strong one because I told them the alternative, frankly, is I could just vacate the easement entirely and the street doesn't get improved and now they have to maintain the utilities that are there. I don't think that's a positive answer to anybody. So they feel if they can get a new road and it's up to my brand new road, that they'd be willing to go ahead and accept that responsibility. But I want to make sure we get that all out in writing before moving forward, because I don't think in the long run the city should maintain a private road. So that's that one. They have Reservoir Drive, 3rd to Willow. That is just a little bit of a widening that we need to do that we haven't done in that area. The unspecified projects, Lawrence again, a lot of traffic signal upgrades related to the left turn and right turn that we're going to put in. Page 67, which is the next one. There's some initial design work that we're going to do on Chestnut. Chestnut from Bluff to Corridon is a pretty poor road, but we need to do some design. And that'll take a year or so. And also I have a water line that needs to be replaced there. So I'm looking at kind of doing the design work for the street, but really I'm probably not going to do the actual construction of that until 2019-20, because the water line project for Chestnut is, if I have the money, is probably going to be planned for 18-19 or at the same time in 19-20. So right now that's just design. Again, here's the Hammond widening, 5th to 3rd. That's the street repaving that we need to do. That's going to go in conjunction with the water main that we're going to put in that section also. And then we have the street sign replacement. It was discussed in previous council meetings that the condition of the signs out within the city are pretty poor. They're cracking, faded. So we've allotted $150,000 to go through that process to replace street signs. It's undetermined at this time if we'll get all of them done, but we're mainly going to focus on the major arterials and then do a lot, as many as we can of the residential streets, and then we'll fund what hasn't been done through any available money that may be still remaining or savings in street projects or next year's budget. And then I have money allocated for $200,000 for the traffic calming. Most of that's going to be used up in relation to the work that's going to be done on North. So that's what that's budgeted for, plus some other minor things we may do related to traffic calming, other improvements we may come up with. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Mayor. Chad, I didn't understand, and I was going to ask you tonight when we got to that Hidden Valley right or left-hand turn deal on 2nd and 6th here. When did you say that was going to be done?
I'm trying to get the actual draft plans to Caltrans by the end of this fiscal year. Hopefully we get through all the approvals and conditions no later in December, so that I can actually go out for bid and construction.
So you're saying that'll be done by December or in December probably?
The plan approvals and get ready for bidding. Okay. Whether or not we can get the construction side done by the end of the fiscal year, we'll see. Again, it's 2 major intersections, and right. We may want to not do them at the same time because they could have a major impact throughout that area. Or we may say, we'll bite the bullet and just get them done. But they both will have significant impacts in that area to heavily trafficked areas when we start them.
I understand that. And one more thing that I haven't noticed in here, and I didn't really have time to look through all of this, but on River Drive over by Corona, and on Bluff Street over here between Vine and River Road, where you've got it fenced off for the erosion. Now on River Drive, and the guy sent us pictures of it, and I was talking to him the other day because he's my neighbor back there. But that goes up under the road, and I imagine the same one does over on Bluff over between River and Vine. Is that our duty to fix that, or is that the Army Corps of Engineers? I know when I moved here, they had part of River Road closed off. I mean, River Drive was closed off to residents only because it was eroded out then, and it took them years to fix it and open the streets through traffic. So is that Army Corps of Engineers or is that our job?
So let me take the River Drive one first. So the River Drive one, there is erosion that's at the bottom of the base of the hill. It is not impacting the road whatsoever. It's not undermining the road whatsoever. The slope that was constructed by flood control, it goes in this direction from the road surface.
Right.
And down at the bottom is where it eroded. So in the middle of that, there's a V-ditch that takes water across. And at one point, the water overfilled the V-ditch and started eroding the hill. It's at the very bottom and is where that area was dug out. It's not even close to getting to the top of the hill, let alone to the road, which is much farther in. The responsibility is something we're trying to figure out because my assumption is it should be Army Corps who maintains it. But however, you got to remember that particular project was something that was funded by flood control and Army Corps built, but it hasn't been accepted. And there's actually a maintenance agreement that I'm currently reviewing that actually involves the city, Army Corps, and flood control as far as percentage responsibility to maintain that slope stabilization project that was done. So we have been calling everybody that we can to try to get Army Corps to call us and talk to us so we can talk about that project, find out what is going to be done. I couldn't even get Army Corps to call me about fixing a fence that they should fix on that same road. We ended up just fixing it ourselves. So my belief is that it's Army Corps. There is not an immediate issue or danger with the slope stabilization, the slope that has slipped in that area as far as to the roadway. But we are actively trying to get both flood control and Army Corps involved to find out who's going to fix this. So that's about what I can tell you at this point, what the update is on that. River Road itself is a project that I'm going to talk about later in the Measure A project fund. The other slippage I think you mentioned, I don't know if that's the area that was next to the church. Is that what you're referring to? Or are you talking about the Corridon?
It's between Vine Street that goes by Ted Brooks Arena and the school that they built down there on River Road and Bluff. Yeah, it's across the street from where the new treatment plant's going to go.
I think it's next to that school, right, or church. Yeah, that's Army Corps property. My understanding, I think at the time there was something that broke and kind of rutted it out. But I don't think anything's ever been determined about whether Army Corps is going to fix it or not. I honestly have not been involved in that particular.
I think it happened this winter during all the rains over there because it's a big hole when you're driving down the street there. You look at it, it's huge, and to me, it's close enough to the street that it's probably going up under the street at one point there.
Yeah, I'll have to look at that one. I know the erosion was occurring in that area at the time. Again, I think I looked at it 6-7 months ago when I saw it originally occurred. It was some erosion. Definitely, it was kind of rutted out, but maybe it's gotten bigger since the rains.
Yeah, we had more rain in the last 6 months than what it is, but I see that every time I go by there, and it's kind of got me worried that it's going to run under Bluff, and then we'll have to close Bluff Street off to major traffic, and that's going to really impact Corridon and Sundance and all those streets in there if you had to close that off. But the fence is sitting just almost right up on the edge of the street.
So somebody has fenced it, I guess? I'm not aware of a fence.
Well, there's always been a fence along there.
Okay. I know there's a fence on our side, but I didn't realize there was a fence on the west side.
I think they've moved it up there since. I couldn't stop either time I've been by there because too much traffic.
Okay. I'll take a look.
Yeah, look at that because that's kind of a dangerous deal, and it would really impact our other neighborhood streets if we had to close that because of the danger of a car falling off in the hole there.
So what's going to be our remedy if nobody from the Corps of Engineers is going to talk to you?
Well, again, that's why I'm trying to work with flood control because they obviously had worked with the Army Corps to do the original contract.
But nobody's ever accepted that project.
Right, but again, they should have contacts. Like I said, I got multiple staff trying to call their contacts. I've been calling my contacts. Brian's been trying to get contacts for his issues. If we get people that really have no jurisdiction in the area, not sure who it is, it's a very tough organization to get meaningful people. So I don't know what the answer is as far as what are we going to do if we can't get a hold of somebody.
What year did they put that in over there on River Drive, that slope, that little trail or that road down halfway down? That's been in there 15 years or longer.
I don't know the date when they did the stove.
You remember, Kevin? Yeah, it's been close to 20 years. I can't imagine that they've never completed the contract on the thing.
Mr. Mayor, we went through the environmental division for our rundle removal to get a response. And so that's how we kind of backdoored it to get our response from real estate division. So that's who's supposed to set up the next meeting. And I want to piggyback the River Drive with that during that tour when they come out. Because he's supposed to bring some engineers with him as well. And then maybe from there, we'll have the right contacts to work with flood control on that.
I'm going to ask Andy to comment on it, but do you have Twitter?
No.
It seems to work for some people. Go ahead, Andy.
Now, one of the other final option we're going to look at after exhausting our current Army Corps of Engineers and Calvert's office.
I just have one thing on when you look at your street sign replacement, because I've had a couple of people ask me, at the corner of 6th and Hammond, can you make sure that, where it says Norco Drive on one side and 6th Street the other way, can we make sure we're in compliance with DOT on that? They say they don't see the Norco Drive side. It gets lost. It's not big enough. And I'm just passing it on if you can look at it. So they understand that Norco Drive goes one way, 6th Street goes the other. Thank you.
So, Andy, one of the things I'm kind of confused about in terms of TUMP fees, we have the TUMP fees. We're hoping to capture as much of that isn't going to other bridges possible, but there's $600,000 a year coming in over 10 years, but then there's another pot of money that they're talking about, 49, whatever that is, that's going to be used statewide. Is there some way we can capture some of that money for maybe some of this, or what are the rules for utilizing that? Justin was at a meeting I was at this morning, and he talked about that, and I'm confused if that's part of the $600,000 or if there's another pot of money that's available, and what are the rules?
I'm not familiar with the extra 49.
Don't quote me on the number, but it's a huge amount of money.
Okay, that is a little. I'll look into that.
Yeah.
Just for clarification. One, fund them. For the next 3 years, provide additional $600,000 to the city of Norco.
Right.
That's above and beyond what we are currently scheduled to receive.
Right.
Gas tax.
Right.
Revenue. Unfunded, the measure that provides on the Avenue Bridge replacement project.
I asked him, and Justin didn't know how the two work together, and I didn't want to press him because there was lots of people around, but I'd like to find out what that, if it even exists, or what it means, or how you can maybe grab some of it if it's there.
Go to page 87, which is the storm drain fund. So the storm drain fund it's got about $94,000 expected to start the balance. There's a little bit of impact from development fees, where we traditionally get all our money, and this year we've been allocated $4.2 million from flood control for our projects that we propose to do. Again, flood control has been very supportive of the work that we do. They really like the fact that Norco gets a lot of the projects done. They'd like to see us do more if we could. So we've aggressively asked for quite a bit of money and quite a few projects that will get out for design aggressively to try to move forward, improving mitigating the flood conditions all around the city. So real quick as we'll go through these. And again, normally on this, since it's a year-to-year allocation flood control, I don't like to show the future projects because since we asked for a year-to-year allocation. So that's why you don't see things in the future year. But commonly, some projects that we're doing right now, maybe that are designed, will now be constructed this year and we just carry them forward. So that's the reason why you don't see anything in the future. The first project is a lateral in Temescal Avenue between River Drive and 7th Street. Again, that's money that we're going to put in design, hopefully get under construction. Lateral in Pedley Avenue from Riverview Elementary. Andalusian Drive at Reservoir 6 and 7. That's one we've almost got done design, so we should be in construction for that. There's a lot of water that flows off that hill and just ruts away the trails in that area up in the hills are there. We have the phase 2 of the N7 project. That's the N7. The first part was on 3rd and then on Reservoir. That second part of that project, we finally got it designed. It took all year, but we got it done. We got the easements that we need from the residents. And we just did get the bids back today. So again, so far it looks positive as far as what the bids were. But again, since all the funding comes from flood control, no matter what the bid is, they will match that 100% for that, plus 20% for engineering and 10% for contingency. So regardless of how it comes in, our original engineering estimate, flood control will cover it. We have Crestview Drive, that's from 8th to Arlington. We have a minor storm drain at Bluff Street between Vine and River Road. Burger Basket, again, is one of the ones we finally got finished designed, and we're going to take that one with the Andalusian project, get that out for bid. We'll get that one done, certainly for this next fiscal year and construction-wise. Corona Avenue between 2nd Street and Tally Ho. They get a lot of flooding in that area, and we actually had a street project we were going to do this year, but we held off the street project because now we realized we had this project, so we will do both the street and the storm drain at the same time. We have Parmenter Park storm drain. That is basically at the bottom of the hill where Parmenter Park is. You get a big lake that forms. We want to put in a storm drain there and carry that water through the park all the way to 5th Street. And that way it takes it away and we don't get those flooding in that area anymore. And that's what this project is going to be designed. And again, hopefully we can get it under construction. Is it 4th Street? Sorry, I'm not 4th, maybe it's 4th Street. We have N-1C, which is Pedley and Green Tree, and then we have Norco line ND, that's California and Crestview as far as projects we're taking. Again, this is part of that work of storm drain and partial in California, some of it on Crestview, and trying to control that. And again, that's a piece of the project that needs to be done in order to rehabilitate California itself, is get the storm drains done. And this is not all the storm work that needs to be done on California. This is just a piece of it in trying to get the water that's coming from the Crestview area down to California and then get it going in the right direction. Really, we need to get a storm drain all of California, and that's future projects as far as we're going to work for and get allocation from flood control. All in all, again, it's an aggressive budget. We're trying to do $4.2 million in projects, but again, we're going to be hiring quite a few design companies that are very good at this process, and we'll get them under design as quick as we can so we get as many of them under construction within this fiscal year. Like I said, these are all improvements that just make things better for everybody. And then we'll look at other projects, and we have a list of them already that we're going to try to get. There's several projects that are currently classified as large storm drain projects that normally flood control will do, that they are willing to give to us to design and construct because there's an urgency that we have for them. One of them is on Valley View. Another one is on both north and south. One's between 2nd and 3rd. And another section between 6th and 7th. On Valley View, again, large projects they were going to design, they're willing to give it to us, but that'll probably be next year's budget. But again, we can try to bring those forward because we need those impacts now. But again, they're happy to do that because we've had a lot of very good success on our projects. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have a question. Where would Hillside Lane and then where would that be? Because I know. Would that be, because I don't see Hillside and then I'm assuming that's part of the
Hillside Lane
improvements going from Hillside?
Oh, that's part of the large storm drain improvement project by flood control. That's not in this.
Okay.
They do that separately. I think it's a $10 million project. That's totally
That's the one that goes all the way through the high school, and so where does that get listed, though? I mean,
Not here, because we're not building that. They're building it themselves.
I got it.
And
So
we
these
don't-
are only things that we're doing using their funds?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, is there some way we can get those listed so that people know that those things are getting done? Would that be out of line to have something like that?
Well, they're listed every month. The current projects listed on our website as CIP, and these will be updated in the new CIP. It'll be listed as projects we're going to be doing in the next year, along with water, sewer.
I
All
meant
these
the ones
projects are
that the
listed.
flood control's doing themselves.
Yeah, we can add those as an information item within the website itself.
Would you mind?
Yeah, that's no problem.
Great, thank you. Because that's significant. I think people need to know that that's something that one of the guys over there told me that we actually per capita get more projects done than just about anybody else in Riverside County because they like working with us, and I think people should know that.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't, Kevin. Chad, any of those projects there, are they going to alleviate the problems at Fifth in Temescal or the Fifth in Corona? The one that with floods all the time?
No, not in that area right now.
So we're not-
Because, again, we're looking at that, but the issue is it's the hill and how do you get the storm drain to go? Because
Yeah,
there's a
I'm
storm
just-
drain on the other side, but we're looking at that.
So none of the ones of these other projects will take care of that?
No.
No, the hole down there off of Fifth Street where it floods all the time. You don't drive down there, right?
All right, any other questions? We'll go to page 101, which is the sewer facilities. Again, we have beginning balance about $3.4 million. We're expecting to get some impact fees about $500,000. We get the Silver Lakes funding, repayment of the bonds. Other sources, we do get some flood control money here, and that's for building of a reservoir for our recycled water system that we're trying to get finally approved. So we have about $4.9 million. The various projects, again, we're still doing SCADA projects and upgrading the system that weren't done on the original SCADA. Improvements that were done this past year, recycled water improvements. It's a placeholder in case we have to expend some money to get any of the maybe initial parks online into the recycled water system. RCRA improvements, again, budgeting if we have to potentially fund the new pump station that's going to go in as part of the RCRA plant that may not be used if we do it under the SRF loan, but we put it as a placeholder just in case. Primary infrastructure improvements are going to be Corona 1 and Valley Lift Station. Both those projects are finally almost completed with design, should go into construction. They'll be about $500,000 to fix. We have the First Street siphon rehab, the lift station aerators that we're constantly trying to improve and add on to the system. We have generic unspecified manhole projects we do from time to time where they've sunken down or they got damaged. We replace them, so we always budget a certain amount to do those repairs if we needed to. Flume 14 is another siphon that we need to fix. That, again, the design's done. We're ready to get construction. The yard security improvements, we've added for that. That's for our budgeting. We also need a Vector truck to effectively be able to clear out lines. We've been doing a lot of work on customers who have impacted laterals, and not having the equipment makes it tough, and we might be able to help remove the blockage, mainly through our main, but if we can help move the material that's in their lateral, it might be helpful. Again, we're not advocating or planning to do the plumber's work, but while we're out there, it helps to have the right tools. A Vector truck definitely does that. We don't have one for sewer, and purchasing that would be extremely helpful. Next page, 102, the recycled water storage tank is what's budgeted. That's the current recycled water system doesn't have a storage tank. It needs one in order to operate effectively. We're looking at building that at the Neil Snipes Park. We have currently one there. That's about a 30,000 gallon tank. We really need a minimum of about 250. It's probably going to be a tank that's about 500,000 gallons. That'll go in that same area, and we'll upgrade the existing booster pumps. We have inquired, just so you know, with the state about obtaining their reservoir number 2, which is on top of that same hill. If they really need it as part of their infrastructure, it's our opinion that they don't, to support what they need to do there. And it has been a maintenance issue for them in the past. It's about 70 years old. It's due for replacement, in our opinion. But we could, that site would be ideal for us to use it because the elevation, I wouldn't have to have pumps that I'd normally have to build. So we haven't heard everything back from them, but we are inquiring as potential alternates a facility that would be much more functional for us than building a reservoir at the park. But
That's the old Navy one with the wood top that they said would last 35 years when they built it in 1944
Well,
with a wooden top
I don't know if it's wooden top. It's the one on the hill. It's above across from our reservoir number
on Beacon
1.
Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's supposed to last 35 years.
It's gotten 70.
Yep, good wood.
So the last couple of projects there are basically unspecified sewer line extension if we have to do anything, and any additional unexpected lift rehab that we may have, lift station rehab we've had to do. And with that, I'd happy to answer any questions you may have.
Same as the water, that when we get to 2019, 2020, that's when the sewer rate increases will take effect? Okay.
Yeah, all this percent.
Correct. Okay, same
asterisk.
footnote. And then on the RCWA and recycle water capital improvements, that 850, that's going to be for replacement, the replacements of the pumps? Is that included in this 850?
At this time, the plan for RCRA is to build a whole new pump station that will effectively pump the water either north or south, the entire amount from the plant. And we would, as independent agencies, fund that through our percentage share of the treatment plant. It's unknown what the cost would be at this time. Different numbers have been floated. It just depends on how significant we build that as far as redundancies, et cetera. But I feel the 850 is more than adequate to cover that. I think, though, honestly, they're going to try to just do it under the SRF, so it would be a moot point.
But we have some pumps in place.
We do have pumps in place, which would require significant upgrade.
Correct.
If we wanted to upgrade those. They're old at this time. That's why we want to decide we're either going to go with the group and build with theirs or do our own. But realistically, at this time...
So this could bypass that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Anyone else? Thanks, Chad.
Okay. This is just sewer connection. Sorry, let's go to Measure A. This is the other big street one. This is page 135. So our current balance is $1.8 million. We're going to get about $659,000 in a new Measure A money, about $2.5 million. Project-wise, this is mainly where a lot of the streets are going in, and a lot of these streets are related to storm drain projects. If they get done, we would do the street also, and I've identified that by an SD next to the name, so it lets you know that it's associated with a storm drain project. So that's specifically why we have chosen to pave that street, is because there's a storm drain going in, and we want to finish off the road. So that's how we came up with some of these roads, why we selected them, because there's a capital project there in another fund. So we have Rocky View, which was a small section of basically it's a cul-de-sac that needs to be slightly grind and overlay. We have Market Street, which is right up here. That will involve, we just got the bids in for that today. Again, very favorable bids. It's just for it's going to involve complete removal of the trees, complete removal of the sidewalks, redo of the whole street, and to improve that area. Golden Gate Circle, which is again part of that project that just got bid, that's a little cul-de-sac area that's unfortunately gotten a lot of undulations into the street that we need to fix. And then Corona Avenue, the other part of that was Corona Avenue from 5th to 4th. That was different fund. The other section, which is here, which is Corona Avenue 1st to 2nd, that's the one we held off on for this year because we're doing the storm drain project, so we'll get that done. Bluff Street, River Road Divine, we're doing a storm drain project that is part of our reservoir project, so that we're going to do that storm drain project. As part of that, we will repave the road once we get that storm drain done that's required to be placed in Bluff Street. Hillside Avenue, 2nd to 3rd, the project we're working on. Hamner Avenue, again, 3rd to 4th. There's more of that funding. Reservoir, Corona Temescal, 7th to River Drive. Again, that's a current project. That's a storm drain project that's been awarded. We're going to go I'm going to try to quickly, unfortunately won't go with that contractor because it wasn't bid that way, but I want to go back through quickly, and once that contractor's finished, go back and pave the whole road and get it done. Chestnut, again, that's for future year. Pedley Avenue, 7th to 6th, that's part of a storm drain project. Green Tree, which is part of another storm drain project. Western, that's future year, River Drive, Corona to Temescal. That's the area along the river, obviously, and that's only between Corona and Temescal. Other sections have been already finished previous years. We're going to go through and rehab, basically grind and overlay through that area to improve that area. It's been a common complaint from residents in that area. Pedley Avenue, 8th to 7th, that's again part of a storm drain project. And then I have First Street, Temescal, I'm sorry, that's not right, that's future year. We have Hamner Bridge on page 136, the second page. We have Hamner Avenue Bridge funding. Again, we don't anticipate ever having to use it, but we're using it as a placeholder. And then I just have miscellaneous minor projects. If they come up, we have some funding sources to pay for certain things. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding our last slides.
Mr. Mayor. Chad, over here on 135, the Western Avenue from 2nd to Park Ridge. I know that's a future long way down the line, or 2 or 3 years, but that's in the JR spread. Now, is Western not a private street like Mustang Lane?
I don't think it is, but I have to check. It was something that was identified in previous CIP, and I've just pushed it back out because it wasn't a high priority to get done versus some of these other projects.
But I know they have different rules over there than what we have in the rest of the area, and I didn't know if that would be if Western was a private street. What's the deal on the trails over there, Greg? You remember in that area?
Yeah, well, two things with. Remember with the college presentation here recently, they wanted to open Western.
Right.
One of their options, so it makes me think Western's not private. But then we had a few years ago, remember those in the JR spread, those encroachments we had?
The fences,
those 3 fences?
2 years ago.
Right.
That was on a private street.
No, they weren't. I don't think those were private streets.
Well, I was under the impression that nearly everything over there was a private street.
I'm not sure of all their covenants, but I don't believe those were private.
Maybe, but I know it's in the JR spread, so I'm thinking it's in the JR spread. And I just
that track has an assessment. So those all homeowners are assessed. That's how the JR spread is maintained.
Like with their arena and
yes,
all of that.
And so there may be something in there that's related to their trails or they maintain them, but I'm not real familiar with it. But there's some sort of an assessment I do know, just from my discussions related to the JR, the arena and stuff.
Okay.
Charged a certain fee to keep up that certain section of their development. And I want to say, I think there's only like 26 homes or something that are involved with that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, you talked about Market Street. You're taking out trees. Tell me you're putting back some trees that are more road friendly?
No, those are private property trees. Those are all belong to the bank, and they're removing all of them in order so we can do the construction in the first place.
Okay, so the bank is removing the trees.
Yep, they're paying for all that.
And
I've already got that agreement in place.
Are they going to replace the trees?
That's up to them. It's their private property. I doubt they will.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just aesthetically, it makes the street look so much nicer. So anything we can do to enhance their ability to replace the trees.
Yeah, unfortunately, like I said, the trees are already impacting their parking lot as far as the where their cars are. So, and we don't have any additional space beyond the original sidewalk, so we don't have an ability to do anything on our own. So it's really up to whether the bank wants to choose to do that. They would have to literally move them far enough away where they currently are and take up all that parking they currently have in that section, because right now that's the issue. Is if they did plant something, I'd want to make sure they did it far enough away from the existing sidewalks so you don't get the reoccurrence of what's occurred.
Oh, I know.
And they do the root bears, et cetera, et cetera. So I think they're looking at it as a maintenance issue and are fine with getting rid of the trees. To be candid.
Any greenery we can talk them into would be appreciated, okay? Because I can guarantee you, if we'll hear about it, and you're going to hear about it once they're gone. I mean, just, and you know it'll happen.
Understood.
Okay.
So the urgency is the sidewalks on Market?
Well, it's a street condition, and the sidewalks are a hazard. They're pushed up, they're a trip hazard in many areas.
But
Around the corner does that go around the corner towards the senior center to cover the bank property there?
Those trees doesn't go back along that around the corner. It doesn't seem to have had the impact because the trees are a little bit farther offset than the other trees, which are right up near the curb. So it's mainly been only on Market where it's been really bad.
Okay.
can you talk to him about the trees?
Yes, sure.
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, it's not an assessment, it's a homeowners association in that area. It's one of the only ones we have in the city of Norco.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. Okay, Chad?
And that concludes our presentation.
Good report.
Good report, Chad and Brian. Appreciate that.
Andy?
Almost done, just based on the items you go through the CIP presentation. It's that has an impact on the general fund, primarily the $55,000 that we talked about that into the corridor staging area, and the $10,000 that is being added to public art that we have today for the general fund. Is part of the ongoing public art related to Ingalls. Is that correct?
But it's a transfer of funds from their fund.
What are they doing now? Is there more art to come, or?
Well, it's part of the overall plan that they had, and that is inclusive of the landscaping and to look at one more public art place, locate one more piece of art. And so the committee at some time had identified that out of the funds that they raised, they wanted to put it back into Ingalls.
Got it, yeah.
And that's been identified.
Are we getting close to getting that all done? Is it pretty close to?
The next thing is to bid the landscaping. We've done the front part, phase 2 at the corner is going to be done, and then we're working with the master plan committee on the signage and the rest of the landscaping.
Unless some group wants to donate money and buy some more animals to put up there.
Okay, the plan is that we'll be bringing back the budget to you on June 7th, both the operating budgets as well as the capital improvement program budget for adoption on June 7th.
Anything else? We're adjourned.